Yes, so let's get started. You messaged me about debating on gay marriage. No, I'm sorry. I posted a message in a server holding the position of being pro gay marriage, and you responded to me, and then we set up this debate. So, would you please introduce yourself and say what your opinion on gay marriage is?
Sure. My name's Shwah, and my position is that gay marriage is it's generally illegal and it's impossible to legalize. It's definitely impossible to make legal inside America, and subsequently pretty much every country. Uh, and then, but there, so we would need if we want to have gay marriage, we would have to legalize it under different frameworks in the governments that we have.
I don't see really how so. I mean, there are a lot of other countries who already have implemented or who allow gay marriage. For example, the Netherlands has done it in 2001. I mean, it seems only reasonable and logical that other countries can do it as well.
I guess I'd have to say I don't know too much about Netherlands laws or other ones, but I do have to say, insofar as they um, have a constitution, um, I would have to assume they use a precedent in order to allow it. Uh, but do you know a lot about the constitution for Netherlands?
I know the First Amendment.
What could you say what the First Amendment is?
I don't have it memorized, but it's basically against discrimination of gender, of sex, of political opinion, of religion. Uh, So that's basically non-discrimination, and sexuality came with it as well. So under that framework, we can also say, yeah, gay people should be allowed to marry as well. Otherwise, it would be exclusion uh, uh, of their sexuality. It would be discrimination basically. I mean, I think you can do the same in the U.S.
Def, Definitely can't in the U.S. Inside the U.S., uh, we're granted rights as individuals. It's very particular. And since the falls of the monarchy, you had like Wallachian conception or the Rousseauian conception, which superseded the monarchs, and those are based on individualism very explicitly. That you have the individual, but they have different conceptions of it. Um, and in that case, like even the fascists and the Nazis, the Marxists, they've been inside the Rousseauian framework. And generally, they never superseded it legally or anything like that. So I just don't see exactly how Netherlands could. I was going to pull it up and see that, but I did want to say that particularly how America words it, and I can show you some sources, particularly Obergefell, which is the gay marriage one in 2015, in which we legalized gay marriage. He uses very specific language, and you have to use this specific language for America. Um, and what they what they do is they try to justify it from individual autonomy, and they try and say like, okay, well, every individual has a choice to make, and they could choose to marry, so everybody should be given that right to marry, and that would include people who are gay, etc.
Yeah,
um,
I mean that's fine, right? Like, are you just opposed to gay marriage, or like are you opposed to the law being in place?
Oh my god, I need to study. I pulled up the Netherlands one to see what it is, but no, no, that seems right. That seems really good. In fact, let me if I could post it, the exact framing that it used because it's actually really good.
Yeah, post it in the Discord.
Okay, uh, do you need me to read it out? It says, first, this is the opinion of the majority court for Obergefell in 2015. This is what justified it, and this is how this works is really important. It says first, the right to personal marriage, to personal choice regarding marriage is inherent in the concept of individual autonomy. Second, the right to marry is fundamental because it supports a two-person union unlike any other in its importance to the committed individuals, a principle applying equally to same-sex couples. So it basically says you have an individual, they can make a choice, and because they can make a choice, you can have marriage as a fundamental right. And then and then it says, and then it tries to say, okay, well, that applies towards homosexuals just as well, a two-person union. But there's a lot of issues with that. On the surface of it, it seems really clever. It's very on point, and it is. But it does miss an important point, and that's the we have a right to, as individuals, we have a right to associate. We don't have a right of association, and that applies towards jobs. That applies towards somebody even being married. Just because we want to associate or we choose to be able to, we have the right to choose to be able to associate. It doesn't matter mean we have the right of that. They can still tell us no, we can't have a job, no, we don't have the marriage, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't. There's nothing that is enshrined specifically about any association, and therefore there's no fundamental right for marriage. There's no fundamental right for a job, at
Wait,
least
wait,
not
wait. But
under.
this argument applies to same-sex marriage as well. Sorry, to different sex to straight couples as well,
Yeah,
right?
it does. Yeah, it does. Yeah,
Okay, so then
yeah.
there's not an argument against gay marriage. There's an argument against marriage in general.
Which includes gay marriage. But the point
Yeah,
that
but
the
that's
point
why we specify it. It's about the gay marriage thing. It's not specifically about marriage.
no, 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 no. That's reverse, and this is okay because gay marriage does follow under marriage. And my point is that you cannot allow gay marriage, and because you cannot allow marriage, you cannot allow gay marriage. And let me let me go a little bit further actually into this. You cannot. It says second, the right to marry is fundamental because it supports a two-person union. This is a particular association that cannot be derived from the right to associate. A two-person union. This is not bigamy. That bigamy, like who you can do these things for, you cannot choose who to allow to be married uh, under, except by precedent, but you can't allow it under the Constitution about who we recognize as granted rights. So in this case, you have the Mormons just as well who try to do that with bigamy. But we get federal rights and then we get punishments based on this fundamental rights of union. So insofar, I haven't looked at any of the other ones. I feel like we would have to go through some of them a little bit more specifically because I looked up the Netherlands one time. I don't see I don't know. It looks really nice and stuff like that, but and obviously it's a country and they've got their own history and stuff like
Uh,
that. In fact, Netherlands has been doing it for a while. Individualism and all that stuff. So I'd have to look into it. But if it's anything like America, which is granted through individual rights, then I don't see how it can't be it can't be legal because you would have to grant every association right, or at least every two people association, based on privacy or something like that. You would have to grant it some rights based on that, but that wouldn't lead you to marriage specifically whatsoever. So yeah, there's no ability under the Constitution which is a fundamental right to marry, and therefore, because we can't have that, we cannot have gay marriage itself. And let me throw in the kicker. What that means is that they import by cultural precedent uh, the right to associate this association from religion, particularly Christianity in America, and we shouldn't have it be a state right or a federal right. It should be a decision by the churches, just like a job and stuff like that, whether they can marry you.
okay, so so all this was just saying um marriage should be decided by the church.
it cannot be decided by the government. It can't be legalized by the government.
Well, I would disagree. I mean, there are a lot of things connected to if you get married or not. I know how it is in the US specifically, but I think it's in the Netherlands you have two sort of two sort of marriage. You have one marriage where you get married in church, etc., etc., and you have marriage as a status of your citizenship, and that's important because that's I think that's a distinction that we need to recognize. If you say you're married, in the sense of that you're recognized by the state as getting as married, you're recognized. You can have, for example, shared contracts or shared getting a house and all that sort of stuff that accompanies that. I think therefore in that sort of marriage, the government has no right to exclude gay people from getting that. Would you agree?
Uh, the government cannot. Well, they can't legalize it. They can't make it illegal either. No, I would agree with that.
Okay, okay, so then we're talking about two different systems, okay? And I think that's fine. If you say, okay, gay people can get state married and straight people can get state married, that's fine. So now we move over to the church married, okay? So you say basically, because it's not an individual right, uh, uh, or
One second.
yeah,
One second. I'm sorry, but this is based on legalization, so this has to very specifically be what the state is doing. I'm perfectly fine with a state outside that, like a possible states outside that being able to grant it and it having something that works. In particular, Christianity, I think, can allow gay marriage. But none of the states that we have right now can do that. I just looked at the Netherlands just to be sure, and it does grant people rights as individuals. It doesn't use that language, but that's what it does. It uses Lockean format. It says everyone, and which everyone doesn't necessarily mean individuals, but you can tell by how they worded it that they use negative laws, like you cannot discriminate based on this.
yeah,
You cannot discriminate based on.
that's a good thing,
Yeah,
right?
that's it's just in line with America and all the other constitutions, as far as I'm aware. As far as I'm
Okay.
aware, uh, they grant people based on individual rights, and then you have a negative right, which means or a negative example. So it's like you cannot discriminate against this, and what that does is it just means like okay, but you now have all this other freedom that you could do rather than being like you have to do this. Which limits it so much. It's just how law works, but yeah, yeah. So in any case, no, I wouldn't say that the state can grant any civil unions. Even I wouldn't say they could grant marriage even. So subsequently, they can't legalize gay marriage, and by that,
But then they
yeah,
also wouldn't be able to legalize straight marriage.
yeah, they wouldn't be able to legalize any sort of marriage. There's no legalization that can happen. In fact, they can't make it illegal either. It's just impossible. They can't talk about this association marriage, not as a constitutional fundamental right. Now they
Okay,
can
that's
import
fine.
it.
If you're anti-marriage, that's fine. I can agree with that one. But I think you're framing it a little bit dishonest if you say I'm against gay marriage, you know. I think that's that it feels like you're then trying to get out the most what do you call it? The most spectacular opinion you have to be against gay marriage, but it's just you're against marriage in general. And I can stand behind that. Generally, I
Sure.
don't really
Well,
like marriage as well.
that's fair. Well, I mean, I do like marriage. I just don't think the state should have anything to do with it. But the topic was whether gay marriage could be legalized,
Yeah.
and it is a hell of a roundabout way to go about for that. But yeah, I don't. It does follow still. I would say inferentially that if you cannot that the state cannot recognize or legalize marriage itself, and it can't recognize or legalize gay marriage.
Okay,
And
but
I again,
if we speak
go ahead.
on like what we currently live in now, in the system where marriage is legal, right? Well, marriage is a thing. Would you say that if we have marriage for straight couples, that we should also, to be consistent, say yes, we should have marriage for gay people as well?
I don't think so. I don't think you could recognize or sanction any association uh, through individual
No,
choice.
I get that, I get
Uh,
that, I get that. But we do have marriage right now, even though you think it is inconsistent. do you think that the right of marriage that people currently have right now should also be extended towards gay people?
As we have it right now, I definitely do not. But that, just as well, I wouldn't. I don't think it should be extended towards straights. I don't have to take a side on this. It's not binary. In any case, it's the case I built up. It's that there you can't have gay marriage. That's just simply what it is. There's no equality to have there because there's nothing to recognize for us to be like, okay, well, yeah, you can have it equal. No, if straight marriage happens, I don't think gay marriage should happen. If gay marriage happens, I don't think straight marriage should happen. It's just it's not inside there.
Why? Then why weren't you? Okay, so this seems really inconsistent. Like, why not say, okay, we should allow equal rights for gay people, because that's what gay marriage is about, equal rights, and then you can later on say, okay, abolish, let's abolish the concept of marriage, because I would be on board with that. But if straight people have a certain right, even though I would maybe disagree with it, with those people having that right, then I would say yes, under that framework, I think gay people should also have that right. Even though the right itself may seem ridiculous, I would still have both of these groups the equality to have that right.
Yeah, well, if I could explain a bit how the Constitution works, we don't have rights as straight people. We don't have rights as gay people. We have, and therefore we don't. Those aren't recognized political units or legal units. Those aren't. We don't know who they are. They're not anything to us. So you can't say they're equal under anything. What
Well,
what we
well,
do
well,
again?
well, well. Let's be honest here. Like, gay people are discriminated against in some fields, or at least used to be, and still are, I think, in
Sure,
some states. So,
sure.
wouldn't you then say that straight people have more rights than gay people?
Legally, no, because they're not recognized as a political unit. You can't talk about somebody. You don't have rights because you're a straight person. Now, you do have people doing stupid stuff or whatever, but they're not
So you would
constitutional
therefore not
officers,
say that's
and
a
they're
limita-
not.
Okay, okay, so let's say, for example, the government is allowed to cut the water supply uh, uh, to households that have gay people in them. And they would say, okay, because they're gay, we're gonna shut off the water to their houses. Do you think that would be a justified action?
No, you can't do that
Why not?
because they're individuals, and you can't
I'm sorry, you cut out. Can you?
discriminate individually. And there's a what's his name? I've heard. Sorry. Sorry, they're individuals, so you can't discriminate against them based on any aspect of them, particularly sex. And there was a really guy, and that's well, a guy and a girl. If you have sodomy, then and that's legal. But you have sodomy between guy and a guy, then that makes it, and that's illegal. Then what you do is you're discriminating based on sex, which is illegal by the 19th. It's a really clever argument. And so, in that sense, you're not allowed to discriminate uh, for homosexual marriage, at least as it's been through that. You cannot discriminate against bisexual orientation.
Okay.
Because, so yeah, but they are treated as individuals. So fundamentally, no, the government can't go around just being like doing whatever stupid stuff because they are like that. But if they did recognize straight people, it is very and like straight people was the base. I don't think we get like even half of the laws that we have that are very important and enshrined for us. I don't even think you could have capitalism or economic system because you only recognize straight people. Like what that just doesn't grant a lot where an individual can grant more, even if I'm not an individualist. But yeah, but if we do only legally recognize straight people, then yeah, it's very possible that they could discriminate against gay people. So
I'm.
that's why we don't recognize straight people.
I mean, you can also discriminate without explicitly saying who's being targeted.
Sure.
And would you then not
But
say that's discrimination then, or like how would you call that? So
yeah, yeah. But we're talking about the Constitution. If it's brought up to the Constitution, then it will become illegal, or it will become protected, or in any case, if a good argument is made and accepted, then it's you. Some arguments like they're so well argued and enshrined, derived perfectly from individual autonomy, that if you try to go away from it, you would have to wait until America like goes kaput or something and has used a different constitutional law or whatever it would happen to be a legal system, uh, in order for you to be able to discriminate against.
I mean, I have to wonder, like, what's the obsession with the Constitution? Like, can't you, like, I understand that maybe you're looking for like more practical uh, uh practical philosophy or practical law and that sort of stuff. But I rather focus on, for example, ethics and philosophy. So, like, I don't hear any arguments against gay marriage except against the concept of marriage and with law and everything. But I mean, we are the people who make the laws. We are the people who can change the constitution. So I don't really see the appeal to law here, basically. Like
Yeah, so I consider, so this is individual ethics. This is individualism. This is ethics. This is from Locke, etc. This is applied, in a sense, it's applied ethics into Constitution. We get to see exactly how these things operate. Uh, that being said, I do want to say that the Constitution, as it is, you cannot just change anything. It is a myth. It's not politics. It's not Congress. You can't just change anything. There are some fundamental aspects which, if you get rid of them, like individualism and stuff, then you have to rewrite everything. Every law changes. You can't just like there's this law that's going out by the Democrats. They're pushing it through, and they called it a transgender bill of rights. And I'm like, if you recognize transgender as another political freaking unit, then you have ruined the Constitution. You've ruined every law and right that
whoa,
we
whoa,
have.
how so? How so?
Yeah, because you either have to recognize somebody as an individual and then or as a transgender. And from transgender, you cannot get female rights. You cannot say, okay, well, don't discriminate by transgender, like autonomy, whatever that would be, because that you would have to see if they're transgender or not. And if you only recognize transgenders rights, then you can't grant them rights. So you're just introducing a political unit which cannot cover economic. There's just lots of things you cannot cover. And so, and just to sort of cut to the chase, I did go into there and read the story, and it's just nonsense. That They just use the term transgender Bill of Rights, but what it's saying is you cannot discriminate against somebody by their gender, which is proper. That's how you do it inside law. If you're an individual, you cannot discriminate against any other individual by their gender. It's like okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
yeah,
So you agree with the bill?
well, it's not a bill of rights. It's the whole thing. But the bill itself, yeah, that's how you do it inside there. You're allowed to not discriminate against people against their gender. That could be a law. That's not too much of an issue. That's very Lockean. But you cannot grant another political. We only have individuals. Nobody else has a damn bill of rights except for individuals. There's no race. There's no sex. There's damn sure not going to be a gender because that's uh, assume you go to a law and you're like, okay, well, I think I should be rude to female or discriminate by sex for females because I'm transgender. That clearly has to deal with sex or gender. Perhaps it only has to deal with gender. You want to discriminate, whatever. And it's just like individualism would be like, yeah, well, you cannot discriminate against them by that because we're trying to promote individual autonomy here. And they're like, yeah, but we're trying to promote transgender autonomy here, and we have to account for gender, and we have to uh, deal with that. Otherwise, you're not being transgender, however it would be.
I mean,
Um,
politically speaking, you do have to recognize these groups if you want to if you want to ensure that they aren't being discriminated against, right? Like you have
no,
to identify, for example, gay people as a group, because otherwise you can't say, okay, we should not discriminate against them.
No, not at all. We just say we don't discriminate based on sex. We just say we
Yeah,
don't
so
discriminate.
okay, so then you must acknowledge that there are different groups of sex, and we call them gay and straight, of course, or bisexual or whatever else you have. So then you would also have to
Uh,
identify these groups.
no, well, how would you say it? You would have to identify the general category, but you wouldn't have to recognize any particular thing inside there. So if you said that you cannot discriminate based on gender, whatever that means, I've never heard of anybody discriminating based on gender. Even people who are very against that, that just sounds ridiculous. What they generally do is they discriminate
Whoa,
based
whoa,
on
well,
like
whoa! Discriminating against gender is happening. For example, in transgender sports, currently there are a lot of bills being passed which exclude transgender people from participating in sports. There are a lot of bills excluding them from using the restroom according to their gender. I mean, there is discrimination going on right now, especially with channels like Lips of TikTok, conservatives. You know, these are things that are happening. I hope you recognize that.
well, I'm not sure what a discrimination would be inside there, but how it's solved inside constitutional laws. If you like for females and males, if a female wants to play in a male sport, they're 100% allowed to, and we've seen that before. Inside, you might have had the weird girl. Well, you're not from America, but in America we play football a lot, and it's a really tough sport and stuff. But in junior high, sometimes you'll get like the weird girl, like the squirrel girl or somebody who wants to play football, and so they'll play football. And they have to legally allow them too, because it's you can't discriminate based on sex, etc. So in that same sense, you could allow transgender to play in the same aspect as males if they want to,
I mean, but that's
but that's
different.
how individualism.
Sex is different than gender, right? You know that, right?
Sure. I mean, I don't really care too much about it, but in any case, if they did pass that, then the same would apply towards people who are transgender. You could say like, okay, yeah, you can join the same groups of whichever. So, but yeah, I do feel like how would you say it? Like how we deal with I do feel like the concept of gender does need to be looked into a bit more, because if you like gender dysphoria and how to prevent gender dysphoria, I do feel like once that's solved, then a lot of the gender transitions end, and I think that would be solving gender dysphoria would help a lot of people with the dysphoria that comes with it.
Yeah, I agree. Like, let's abolish the concept of gender, and then maybe there will be less trans people.
Yeah,
Nice. You're also a gender
but
abolitionist.
no,
No?
No. I wouldn't say no. I'm saying abolish dysphoria, and then you get rid of the gender issues. The
I
issue
mean,
is
if you don't have
dysphoria.
gender, you can have dysphoria as well, right?
No, you
Pretty
can. No, you
easy.
can have. No, dysphoria is the base thing, and gender is the adjective. It's the predicate of it. So they have dysphoria, and it's expressed in gender. But you could have body dysphoria. There's other kinds of dysphoria. In this sense, we don't really have any justification for it being a gender dysphoria. We just have the case that it is dysphoria, and that people experience that, and how we call it. What like one of the consequences is they feel like it's a gender thing, but that could be a symptom. That could not be what the issue is of dysphoria. And
Come.
in that case, the solving of it wouldn't be like promoting gender, because that's not the base of it. That's the predicate
No,
of it.
I'm
You would,
promoting gender abolitionism. That we don't have gender in the first place.
yeah, but that in itself doesn't seem to solve the dysphoria,
Yeah, of course it does.
because people
Wait,
would.
yeah, of course it does. Wait, yeah, wait,
Mm,
fuck yeah. If you don't have any distinction between the genders, if you don't have any characteristics that people need to adhere to because it's their gender, then you would also probably remove a big portion of people who experience gender dysphoria. Yeah, it's pretty simple actually.
no, how would you say it? Would people still transition under your conception?
Maybe a few, not many, I think.
You think getting rid of the concept of gender makes people not experience dysphoria. People experience dysphoria like from their like body dysphoria.
Yeah, but that's not the
Like
same as
you
gender
can't get.
dysphoria. Like people can still experience dysphoria when gender is gone, but they can't experience gender dysphoria. Those are totally different things.
You want to wipe our brains of the concept of gender?
Yeah, I want society to move forward and stop using gender, or certain people have to apply to a certain gender characteristic or gender role.
I don't. I don't feel like that we have to in America.
I think we have to do it everywhere.
I mean, like you literally have people being transgender everywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's fine.
Okay, well, my point is, if you have people being transgender everywhere, I don't see how there's any limitation for people being, not being a gender or what. And to be honest, this distinction of sex and gender is it's rather new as far, at least in the West or definitely in America, that I'm aware of.
Hmm.
Uh, so we don't have this distinction between sex and gender. We haven't had this distinction between sex and gender until like 7 decades ago, I think. So in any case, I don't feel like and they're allowed to do whichever they want to anyways. They're allowed to do whatever. Um, I don't see exactly how, and you still have trans. In fact, the more that you focus on gender, uh, unless you literally wipe it from our minds, but I'm not sure how much else gets wiped, has to get wiped from our minds for that to happen. Like sex and stuff like that, and then we'd have to figure it out anyways,
No,
and then
no,
it
wait,
might
wait, wait.
go.
No, if you have distinction between sex and gender, like sex will still be the same, right? Like that won't change probably. But if you remove the aspect of gender, if you remove the idea that men and women need to adhere to specific rules or specific characteristics, then eventually you would have people not being limited by those factors. You can have guys who plays with dolls, and you can have girls who play with cars. By I don't know, maybe even some things that are less noticeable in our society can also be changed. Like for example, men wearing dresses, women wearing suits. If we remove those roles or those expectations that we have of certain genders, then people can be whoever the fuck they want, and then you won't have a lot of this dysphoria which people experience because there isn't a need to. They can
Again,
be whatever the fuck they want.
I'm not sure what the justification for that would be.
Well, I think gender is just a useless thing to have.
Okay, that's perfectly fine. But legally, there's no. I do not see this issue popping up anywhere. There's no place I see it popping up. In terms of if a transgender wants to play in a sport with males or something, there's absolutely no issue with that. But if you have to keep it back on legalization, go back towards the idea, you have associations. We have right to associate. We do not have rights of association. Um, and in that same sense, how would you say it? You do not have a right in public school. You have to go to school in order to how would you say it? Inside there that you cannot discriminate by gender. If a transgender wants to join a female or they want to join a male, then they could do whichever they want. If you're out in the world of business and you're doing whatever, we're an individual citizen at that point, and that's the marketplace is a fundamental right of the individual in choice. Then, if it's a public business, then they have to be able to make these choices. But we don't have. But if it's an association's choice, then they're allowed. Then they are allowed to say, "Well, we don't accept you into being part of UFC or whatever the hell the running squad or something like that."
Hmm.
Inside this one, they do not have to allow you to do that. They don't have to allow you to associate to be in that association with them. And so, in that sense, there's not any issues right there.
Listen, generally speaking, like I don't really care about law. Um, I don't really care about all these concepts. If you believe all those things, that's fine. I'm just I'm just hoping that if you have these beliefs, that you apply them consistently without being discriminatory against gay people or transgender people. That's a
Well, I think I was
pretty
being
low
very.
bar, but I hope you cross it.
I thought I was being pretty. I thought I was being very consistent. And
Okay,
I'm
like
not an
yeah, okay, that's
individualist.
fine. If you can be consistent and non-discriminatory against these groups, then completely fine.
Sure, but I feel like the distinction really here is the whether there's a discrimination happening, uh, and so I don't feel like the right of association is a right of the individual, and therefore I do not feel, and I don't think it can be. There's no way, like take away the law. If you have individualism, there's no way you can be like, okay, well we have individuals, now we have associations, and we have to grant specific associations all these specific things and say they are specifically under these under individualism. Uh, I don't feel like these are what you're bringing up is rights of association, and we don't have that. We only have right to associate. Uh, and in that same sense, uh, I don't feel like the things you brought up uh, in terms of sports. I don't feel like that's discrimination. Uh, uh,
How so?
those I don't feel like that's. But I would say how would you say it? In other places and in other things uh, you can do whichever, and there's can't be
No, no,
discrimination.
wait, wait,
There's
wait.
and
If you're transgender, for example, right? Like you've been on hormones for 5 years or something. I know, and you are uh uh, and you used to be a man. Now you're a woman. You've been on hormones for 5 years. Do you think that that person is allowed to compete with cis women in sports?
it depends on the thing. If it's a right of association, then they don't have to accept you. They just don't. Like they don't have to accept cis women either.
No, but just like okay, how it's currently going is trans women are in sports, like in Olympics, for example. They are in sports, and people who lose, they bitch and complain. Okay, like there isn't really any issues with people who are associating with them. But I do think there is an issue if you start removing people from a team if it is because they are transgender. If you are rallying against you, if you rally against people who have even competed or haven't even tried to compete in those competitions, I think that's an issue because that's discrimination. That's something I would fight against. But if you're saying, oh, well, it's just the teams or anything, then I don't really care. I care about the outcomes that currently conservatives are pushing for.
Well, let me say this: if there are jobs that you've applied for and you haven't got the jobs, do you think you should be legally allowed to have those jobs?
No, it
Do
depends
you
on the
feel like
depends on the situation why you weren't hired in the first place.
exactly? But so you feel like the the right to choose should be with the private company that should dictate that, don't you?
Again,
The
it
right they should
depends on
have
the
the right to hire and
situation.
fire.
Like, do you think, for example, it's justified if companies don't hire gay people because they're gay?
Um, I don't feel like you're allowed to discriminate based on that. No,
Okay, and I agree.
but but okay, but that's a bit separate from the topic right here. In this sense, do you think they are allowed to hire you or not hire you?
Yeah,
They're not
generally
allowed to
speaking,
just
yes.
yeah, but the right is with them because they're the one who gets to choose. They choose, in a sense, whether they want to allow this association. Well, let's apply that towards the Olympics. Now, the Olympics says, like, okay, well, if you want to associate with us, we're a private company. If you want to associate with us, we this is how we divide the genders, or this is how we divide the sexes. But this is how we divide the sports. Period. You know, you have your competitions, you have your abilities versus disabilities, and you have your your sex, whatever it is. And then other people are like, okay, well, we want to associate with that, and they're like, okay, will allow you to associate, and then they're like, okay, well now we're a team for this. We want you to associate, and you're like, well, I want to associate with it. It's like, okay, well, we get to choose, and we get to choose based on what they choose. So in any case, you have these two derivations inside there. So you can't just say that how they choose to associate
No, but
is
wait, wait,
how they choose to make that.
but that's also a thing because if you have a law or if you have a regulation that is against gay people or against transgender people, and then you say, oh yeah, well it's in the rules of the company, then would still be discrimination. You can also fight against discriminatory rules of the company itself.
Well, how would you say it?
Like let's say a law says, okay, or something, or you have a business, okay, you have McDonald's, and they say we will not hire people who in their private lives have gay sex, okay? Like I would say that's pretty discriminatory against gay people, not per se, but of course. And then they say, and you apply, okay? You apply, you go in there, and you say, yes, I am gay. So you go in, and they say, well, if you have gay sex at home, we do not want to hire you. And then would you say, well, it's in the rules of the company, so their right to not hire you, that's their right of association. Would you agree with that, or would you not?
um, I do have um, I do feel like they don't have to hire you necessarily. I don't feel like they can
No, they
explicitly to
don't. But if
decide.
they say you have gay sex, therefore we will not hire you because it's against our policy, would you agree with the
Yeah,
company?
no, yeah. So I would say that they cannot discriminate against you for that, but they don't have to discriminate against you for that to not allow you to be hired. And in that same sense, they do not have to discriminate against you by gender or whatever to not want to put up a gender division for sports.
Okay, but if those okay, so I get that the Olympics has a gender distinction. I fully get that. Okay, but if the Olympics would say we do not allow transgender people to participate in the Olympics, you would say that that's bad, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, okay, okay. Great, great. And then how they divide and how they determine who gets where. You could also make some arguments that maybe it is discriminatory because I remember there was a cis woman, for example, who had a high testosterone level. Then they would allow for her to transition, to uh, uh, participate in the cis women category, or sorry, in the so you had a cis woman
Males.
who had too high of testosterone without transitioning or anything. She was just a cis woman, and she wasn't allowed to participate in the women's category.
They're allowed to do that. They're
Yeah, but
allowed
I
to
mean,
discriminate.
their laws, their rules made it so that even cis women couldn't participate in the category for women. So I mean, then you could argue that it's a discriminatory rule for people with low testosterone levels, or sorry,
Yeah,
discriminating
well,
against high testosterone levels.
yeah, well, we don't protect people by their testosterone levels. What they used to use prior was they'd look at your genitals and you have to show your genitals. Like that was like in the 50s, I think. But anyways, they'd have like a woman doctor and you'd have to show that you weren't a guy. And so like in the females section. So yeah, we don't protect against testosterone rights or anything like that. They are allowed to make this distinction that they want like males or females, or they can call it like this division they call it females, and this division they'll call it males and stuff like that. But they cannot discriminate against by that. And generally, nobody wants to freaking but break that because it's a cultural precedent, the male and female division, at least in the West, for thousands and thousands of years. So we do import that cultural precedent. But if it legally
I
comes
don't
down
really
to it,
care. I don't really care about cultural precedent though. Like cultures change always, and they will always change. So I don't give a shit.
yeah, sure, and I don't care either. That's my same argument against the marriage. So it's just a cultural precedent from Christianity. But in any case, there's no discrimination happening here based on sex, and you have proof and perfect proof because they discriminate. They say the same thing towards cis women. So a testosterone thing falls completely legally under the Constitution. So what you would be doing is you're trying to be like, yeah, but they're when you try to enshrine a female's rights or something to that effect as a female, then you end up with the discrimination that you're trying to work away from. And in any case, it probably wouldn't allow for transgender, anyways, if you recognize people's rights by their sex.
I mean, I'm sorry, didn't quite catch it. I mean, you still agree that if you are fighting for transgender rights, you're also fighting for female rights, right? Like those aren't exclusionary of each other.
Well, I don't think they're exclusive. I don't. They don't sound exclusive, but no, the sex and gender they're not exclusive. No, but I'm not fighting for any of those rights, not whatsoever. I'm not an individualist, but I'm talking about in legalization terms. To pretend I'm an individualist, that I would not be fighting for transgender rights. I would not be fighting for females' rights. I wouldn't be fighting for men's rights. None of that stuff. I would only be fighting for individual rights, and I would be saying you cannot to fight for individual rights
Okay, but
and to
okay,
address.
I get that, but I do have to wonder. Let's say that there is a discriminatory law, like explicitly or implicitly. Would you fight against that?
What's the? It's. I went over the Olympic and the hiring just because I wanted to be very specific. I just on the face of it, yeah, that sounds bad, but discriminatory just in itself, it doesn't mean much.
What if they
We
say, for example, okay, all men are now forced to wear pink t-shirts from now on. Would you be against that rule?
I'm damn. I don't know. I don't. I mean, it doesn't sound illegal to be perfectly honest.
But you would say they're discriminating. First of all, it
Yeah,
would
yeah,
limit your personal rights as a man. Like, wouldn't you agree? You would only be able to, you would be forced to wear pink. Like,
no, no. We're forced to wear clothes.
yeah.
That's
Anyways,
not.
but
That's
like, what if they have like they have state mandated and they give out all of these like pink shirts, okay? And then
that doesn't change it.
you have to wear them 24/7.
That doesn't change anything.
Don't you think that would be a limitation on your personal rights?
No, not at all. Not at all. What you said. It's not a limitation. We could be forced to wear pink shirts, but we can't be it by males. It would have to be females as well. Or we could sue and be like, yeah, females and everybody else has to wear pink.
Yeah, okay,
You
so
can't just
wouldn't you
single step
then
us for males.
so I would even say that if you're fighting of the removal of this law, if you're fighting against discrimination, that is fighting for personal rights.
Well, you would have to fight for individual rights. Yes.
Yeah, and that's what you would do if you fight against discrimination or if you fight against those laws.
There's kinds of things which you may call discrimination which aren't discrimination, and we do allow discrimination. By the way, we discriminate just as in the same example for by your testosterone rates, and they're going to come up with different ways and stuff like that. We when we fight against discrimination, it's against discrimination against a specific thing, and that would be by race, sex, gender, etc. But there's a limitation towards it just as well. We don't have an individual right to choose our testosterone level or our race, or we don't have an individual right. I don't agree with race. I think it's a social construct. We don't have a right to really choose our sex, even if you're intersex or whatever. I don't know. I don't really
Okay, so
care. I
then it
don't
would
really.
be useless to say. So then you would be against ruling that say, okay, yes, yes, I'm against everybody who is a man has to wear a pink shirt because that would limit your personal right. That would limit your individual freedom. Like you can't wear
No,
yellow, you can't wear red. It has to be a shirt. Like if
you're mixing.
like no, but
You're mixing.
if you care about individual rights or personal rights or whatever, like then being forced to wear a certain type of shirt is fucked up.
No. That's not against individual rights. So there's nothing wrong with that. A specific kind of shirt or any kind of shirt or whatever, it's only that we're being under the constitutional law that we're being discriminated
You
against
being
by men as men.
forced to wear a pink shirt specifically
Yes,
is is against your rights of having to wear different clothing. Like this is limiting
we
individual
don't have that right.
freedom.
We don't have that right. We don't
Do you
have
think
right
we
to.
should have the right to choose our clothing?
No, we don't necessarily have. No, we don't necessarily. If we enshrine that inside, then we
No,
screw
but
up
do you
other
think we
laws. We don't
should
have that
have?
now.
Well, then
Oh,
why
do,
aren't you
do you mean
fighting?
like legally? You mean legally? No, we don't have a right to choose a
No, but
shirt
do
that
you
we
think
have.
we
That's
should have that right?
like not legally. No. Why should we legally have the right to choose a specific clothes? That's weird.
Because
Then you
that's
have to mandate.
freedom. That's freedom.
That's not freedom.
Of
It's
course
not
it is
freedom based on
freedom.
individualism. There's no way in hell you can derive that from individualism.
It's
You can't derive the
individual freedom to wear a different shirt or to wear different clothing. What's your ideology? Are you
if
like a libertarian? Or like
not at all.
no,
I'm
I
just a Christian.
noticed for someone who talks about individual rights or individual freedoms, like this is insane to me.
Yeah, well, I'm not a liberal whatsoever, but just a Christian. But no, that's not illegal inside there. We're forced to wear clothes. Like
Yeah,
that's
but not
that's
we're not forced to wear pink shirts. And not even that's true. Like we aren't even forced to wear clothes when we're on the beach. Or at least well we are
we
allowed
are
more.
forced.
Nude
We are
beaches then,
forced. We are forced to. So
to some extent.
I don't.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we have nude beaches. I have no idea. Um, but they're not famous or anything like that. Uh, yeah. So yeah, we personally aren't. So we have to wear clothes and stuff like that. That has nothing. You can't derive that from individual rights. You derive that from federalism. We use federalism to allow inside America. We use federalism to allow individual rights, and it's derived from natural law. Natural law gives us individual rights, and individual rights gives us association, which is federalism. And federalism can enact laws against us and have us do whatever. But it's not an individual right to uh, choose while we're in an association or
Are
federal
you just a simp for
government.
the US? Like are you just a simp for like the people who made the constitution?
No,
Like
I'm American, so I'm just using what the reference point is.
yeah, but I mean these are ridiculous claims. How can you not see that the limitation of your expression, the limitation of wearing, of not being able to choose wearing your clothes, is antithetical to everything the Constitution stands for. Like for
No,
someone who
we don't.
talks about freedom and freedom of association, I mean, then why should you be forced to wear a shirt in the first place? Like it's completely incoherent.
We when we choose to associate, we give up certain. Well, we don't give up certain. We do give up certain rights whenever we choose to associate. But there's nothing from individual choice that says you can be able to go butt naked or you can be able to not go butt naked. None of those specifically in and of themselves are there are enshrined as a law. There's just no way you can go over there and be like, okay, well, the Constitution says this, we're derived it out. Now everybody can be butt naked if they want. You can't derive that. You can't derive butt
No, no,
nakedness
I mean
from.
choosing another color of t-shirt or having some symbols on it or shit.
That's way worse. That's more specific. That doesn't change anything that was just said. There's no law that says you should be allowed to choose something with a specific symbol or a different symbol or
Why
whatever.
not? Why shouldn't you be allowed to? Like should we all
Because
in your ideal world should we all wear like you don't even think it's a right so the government can just infringe upon it? Can just say okay yeah we all
no,
have to wear a certain shirt.
let me let me try and come up with something that's a little that we can apply and maybe it'll make sense. If we go to Mars and let's say it's under the American section, so you have to follow the American law, and they're perfectly allowed to be like, okay, you have to wear a space suit when you go outside, and it
Mhm.
has to be a space suit of a specific sort. So of a specific technology and perhaps even a specific brand until because they have like some faulty ones. They're allowed to do that. They're 100% allowed to
That's
do that.
completely
Uh,
different.
no, it's not. It's the exact same thing.
No, no,
It's the
listen,
exact.
if we're talking about shirts and the color of shirt, then that's an arbitrary decision you can make. If we talk about safety standards, that's completely different. Safety standards lead to more freedom, while limiting the choice of color clothing you wear limits that freedom.
Arbitrariness isn't a right of, especially in clothes. Arbitrariness isn't a right of individuals.
Like I'm honestly, I'm fine with the government saying, okay, you have to wear a fall protection if you go on high buildings. I'm completely fine with that. Okay, that increases the freedom of the people because then they can go home and live. Okay,
Sure.
but if you say no, you can't have this specific symbol on your shirt. No, you can have a different color. No, you can choose what the walls of your house will look like. That's insane to me. Like you have to be in favor of that freedom.
That does suck, but it doesn't fall under individual rights. It doesn't follow under individual autonomy.
Okay, what if you have,
Uh,
for example, a political system, a political symbol on your shirt? Would you allow that?
well, for the right to associate, the right to choose to associate for politics, you should, individualism, you have the right to choose to associate with different things. They don't have the right to, they don't have to choose that they accept you, but you do have the right to choose what to associate with. As far as that being a symbol on your clothing, though, that's entirely separate from the point.
Holy shit. I no, oh my, this is worse. Like for someone who hinges on the Constitution, I mean that's freedom of speech. If you have a shirt and if you can decide what goes on your shirt, if we're talking about specifically in this case a political symbol, that's a limitation of your freedom of speech, and that you
It's
are
if some
allowing it. That's insane to me.
No, if how would you say it? If you and this goes inside the military just as well. If people are allowed to wear shirts and people are allowed to wear political symbols on their shirts, and somebody else comes over and they're like, "I'm a Satanist," or they or whatever, satano liberalism or something, whatever it would be, or satano communism or satano Nazism or something like that, and they have that symbol inside their shirt. The and the people are like, the government police is like, I'm going to arrest you for that shirt. That's discriminatory based on freedom of speech. That in itself is discriminatory. But if nobody's allowed to wear a shirt because they have to have safety standards or because they're in the military and they have to wear a uniform, then you're trying to wear a shirt over it. You can't be like, okay, well, this is freedom of speech. It's like, no, you're in a specific association. There's different levels of
That's different. We're
individual.
talking about safety. We're talking about expression of your ideology.
It's no.
But if you just
I'm
walk
sorry,
on the
but
street and they enforce that you have to wear a specific shirt, and you say, yeah, that's fine, that's not fine. I would even say, therefore, like the British schooling system, for example, is against freedom. They have to wear a certain type of clothing to their schools. I would say that's a
just
limitation of freedom of expression. I'm against that.
we don't have freedom of expression. I'm just going to be very clear. We don't even.
That's freedom of speech. Freedom of expression is the same as freedom of speech, in my opinion.
You cannot discriminate speech. You cannot discriminate about speech, but we aren't allowed to yell fireplace. You're not, well, this. There's a full argument. You're not allowed to yell fire in a movie theater if it's a lie and it causes damage or whatever.
Yeah,
So
but
there
that's
are
the
limits.
outcome. That's the outcome. If you have freedom of speech, then you should be able to have a symbol on your shirt. Well, you are defending the law that we should not even have different sort of shirts.
No,
That's
I'm
a
saying
distinct difference.
you're the things that you're bringing up aren't arguments which are directly derivable from individual rights. If they were, then yeah, you would have to. If we had freedom of expression, whatever that would be, then yeah, you could not have that for private schools. They couldn't have uniforms, or somebody could challenge it, and they don't have to wear uniforms. Or for the military, just as well, they did not have to wear whatever they did. But in any case, we don't have freedom of expression. We have freedom, individual autonomy, and right to associate, and then the right to associate. The associations themselves have a different level. So if we choose, we have a right to associate. Everybody can attempt to join the military, but the military doesn't have to accept you.
That's
And but they
different.
cannot.
That's a job
Okay,
description. That's a requirement of a private company, you said. And nobody is allowed there to do it. But if you're talking about walking on the streets with a certain symbol, with a certain shirt, then that's a limitation of your freedom of speech. You're walking in the public area or in the confinements of your home. If you do it for a specific job, yeah, of course people have to wear uniforms. That's reasonable.
oh, no, we do have a right to privacy, but how would you say this? But we don't have a right to how would you say it? We I don't know how to explain. I've given several examples. We aren't allowed to choose to go butt naked or choose whatever what we want to wear because there's nothing inside there that's there. We have to wear clothes. It's just that's just there. You can't choose. We don't have a right to choose. There's not a constitutional right to choose. Fundamentally, it's not in the domain of immediate fundamental that we can choose to do wear a clothes or not wear a clothes. It's part of an association's rights, and our association would
But
be
if you are
America
in a
or the
public
states,
space, if you are in public space, which association is there? There's none. You're in a public setting.
a state or a city or something like that. You can't just go butt naked in the public area.
Do you think the police, like let's say I'm walking down in Atlanta or something, I don't know, and I'm wearing like a t-shirt with an anarchist symbol on it, right? And then they come up to me and they say, "Hey, you have to take off your anarchist shirt." Do you think that's justified?
No, well, assuming they allow other people to do that, then no, it's not justified. No.
Why only if they allow other people to do it? Like, why would you just not say, okay, yeah, everybody is allowed to do this except when there is harm done? Like, I don't get it. Like, do you think people should be limited to not have like anarchist T-shirts in public? Like
It's there's like a few things here. The one you have we're granted rights if it's not legally legislated, but if it's legally legislated, then they're allowed to say that you can't do this. And again, I've given examples like the military or inside Mars. But there are situations which they can legislate and be like, you have to wear this specific clothing, and it may be challenged based on whether that's whether that makes sense or something like that.
you're just an
Whether
authoritarian, man. Like, you don't give a shit
no,
about
that's
freedom, do
federalism.
you?
No, that's federalism, and I'm not an authoritarian. I don't even recognize that term. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds like a political term. It's like
Yeah, it's exactly
authoritarianism.
what you are. Like, you don't give a shit about freedom.
I I think we're like at five different points. I'm not an individualist. I'm a Christian. I don't feel like authoritarian is a real thing. It's just the negation or the inversion of an individualism. But if we're going by individual rights, the government is allowed to legislate things. I can't do anything about that. It's just that follows perfectly fine.
So you think is the government allowed to legislate everything then?
Not everything. No, there are limitations to them, but they're based on individual rights, not based on expression or whatever, or safety or whatever things you're bringing up.
Wait, so are they allowed to make laws on safety? I hope you say yes to that.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
Okay, good.
the government is. Yeah, but our rights aren't based off safety, and the rights aren't. And how would you say it? Our rights aren't based off expression. And our rights aren't based off our gender specifically,
Bro,
and they
you
aren't
have
based
freedom
off
of
our
speech.
sex.
It's the First Amendment. How the fuck do you not know your own constitution? Come on, burning
Yeah,
the
yeah.
American flag is justified in by that same amendment. So you walking in public with like an anarchist symbol should also be a fundamental right that should be protected. Come on, man.
No, you said clothes. You said clothes very specifically. You didn't say that. You're allowed to be an anarchist. You're allowed to say what
Yeah, and the freedom of
anarchism or
expression, wearing a T-shirt with anarchist symbolism on it, is also allowed in that same purview.
they can legislate against it for specific reasons, and that's perfectly fine. But
Yeah, a
in
specific
regard,
reason, like if it does harm. But if it doesn't, then it's fine. But you would even argue
okay,
that just a specific
yeah,
law saying you have to wear a specific T-shirt is is fine by you. Like that doesn't follow.
yes, it's perfectly fine. And there's like random situations anybody can come up with it. That's perfectly fine. I've came up with some really plausible situations, but it has not. We don't get rights based on safety. Just to be very clear, we do not get rights based off safety. The federal government doesn't get to choose based off safety. Uh, well, fundamentally, they don't get to choose based off safety that a law is made. It's that fundamentally that an individual they have to protect an individual's life and an individual's autonomy and stuff like that, and letting people and having people die isn't protecting individual rights as they are. So they can legislate for that. That's why we give them permission so they can uh, uh, help enforce our individual rights. So in any case, you brought up examples where you go inside the public place, and I said, yeah, if you're allowed to express yourself in that, if there's some reason that it can, like if people are going around to a public area and it's a political thing, then they're allowed to do that, certainly.
They're
But there are going
always
to be
allowed to
certain,
do that.
you're not always allowed to just start yelling. There's association aspects where you can't do things, where you can't do certain aspects. And you can be allowed asked to leave. Yes.
I mean, like people can like I think the government it's fine for the government to take some rights away if it leads to harm, but as a general rule to say no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. When you're talking about what type of clothing people are wearing, that's not okay. Like if you use it as a general rule, that's against the constitution. If you use it as okay, you can't do this because it's one instance when we can do harm. So, for example, yelling fire in a theater. Like I think that's fine. But any other situation, you should not be limited to wear a specific type of clothing. I think that's insane.
Yeah, but you understand what you're saying isn't it doesn't gel really. It doesn't make much sense. It doesn't be like okay, well yeah, here's this situation, but we're against that one. But generally there is whatever. Clearly nothing would work like that where it's just like oh yeah, there's a caveat here. We'll identify caveats as they come up or whatever. But we should just allow this and stuff like that. Well, it's like well then that doesn't explain what the law is. That's going to be confusing and stuff like that. Which is why we base everything based off individual rights. You do not get this right to choose your clothing. You just don't get a right from individual rights necessarily. And we are granted the right to choose specific clothings or to choose clothings in general based on there not being some negation or something like that. But we don't have a right to choose to wear whichever clothing that we want. No, it's just not a law. You can't derive it.
No,
There's
no,
no
it's not
law
a
that
law.
you
It's in the constitution, but fine.
there's no constitutional law that says you can wear whatever you
Freedom of
want, and there's no
expression. Freedom of expression.
what is freedom of expression? I've never heard. What is that?
Wait, you have freedom of speech, right? Freedom of expression would fall
Yeah,
under
we
it
have
as
freedom of
well.
speech. Yeah.
Yeah, and freedom of expression would fall under it as well. Even if you don't say a word, you still have the freedom of speech. So yeah, that I would say that's freedom of expression. Like burning the American flag in public setting, that's fine. That's freedom of speech. That's freedom of expression. If you wear clothing, say fuck the government, that's fine. That's freedom of expression. That's freedom of speech. Yeah,
Yes, it's freedom of speech because it's a political ideology that you follow, and you're allowed to have different political ideologies. Yeah,
yeah. And I would say
but
even if there's not a specific political ideology tied to the shirts you're wearing, you should still be allowed to wear every type of shirt there is, except when it does harm.
the, okay. Well, in any case, the fact that except when it does harm means that that's not exactly. I think there's a set. It's not the exact freedom that you're thinking of. We do have freedom, certainly, yeah, of which we can choose and all this kind of stuff. But the second you say accept this, that pushes it a step outside of what that base individual rights is, and says there's a there's a caveat or something like that.
Yeah,
There's
because I think that's justified. Like there is also a law that you should not kill, but there are exceptions to when you are allowed to kill people. Like I feel like it's the same way. It's just just depending on which law does less harm. And in this case, um, it doesn't do you any harm if you are allowed to express your political opinions, or if you are allowed to wear different types of T-shirts. So I don't think that's a justified law.
we have some base laws which you can't take away, and that's like individual choice. That's right to associate. Um, uh, just things like that. There's some choices like right to thinking or whatever, and in a sense, right to speech. But the second you go out, the second you say, yeah, that it's not necessarily true necessarily for humans, then you go away from that tier of freedoms, which are fundamental rights, and then you go into an area which is it's derivatively fundamental. So there you have a fundamental right, and then from that we can be granted it in certain situations. And because there's in two separate categories, you're not talking about choosing to wear clothes as a fundamental right of humans. And I've already given many situations in which case it is not a fundamental right of humans in America or whatever in individualism to be able to choose whichever clothes we want to wear.
No, because
I've already
wait,
given
wait,
this situation.
but the examples you brought up were ludicrous. Because first of all, they were of our companies, or they were of the safety of the people, uh, uh, in that specific group. So, for example, when you brought up the military, yeah, that's because it's safety. That's because they are an institution that has certain requirements to do their job, to do their job well. McDonald's, for example, they have a required outfit because it's in their job description. It's something they associate with. That's not a limitation of that. Like
Yes, and where and
there have been actual debates, for example, in the Netherlands, if uh, um is if police who are Muslim, if they are allowed to wear nijabs, because how would you rule that? Would you say it is the freedom of expression, or would you have to adhere to the rules of the police that they aren't allowed to wear it because it's a part of their uniform? And that's difficult because the police is basically a function of the state, so you have to decide like which one will it be. And I think personally that if you have such a situation, then it's completely fine to discuss about it. But to say if you walk in general public and you are not allowed to wear anything but a specific set of clothing, then that's ludicrous to me, because you're not doing any specific function. You're just being yourself, and you're not allowed to do that. That's a limitation of freedom. Again, like I don't know how I can make this any more clear.
there are safe. I don't like there are safety laws in the public that we have to follow. That's just a thing. Like it'd be like saying, well, I should be able to allow. I should be allowed to carry a gun inside public because it's a public place. Well, no, there's limitations towards that. And similarly, you can I should be able to walk butt naked in the public just because it's public. No, there's limitations towards it. So
Because
even
there's
inside the
harm.
home,
I've
okay,
gone
well
over
there
this
might not.
multiple times.
There's not harm isn't a specific thing in which case it's harm in
No, it's
itself isn't
broad.
a,
That's why I'm saying there's harm. I'm not saying there's like violation or something. I'm saying there's harm because there's a different situation which can cause harm. Yeah, you cracked the code.
okay. There's a justification for why there's a justification for why they cannot we can't just do anything inside the public. Um,
Yeah,
we can't just do anything. Okay, so because we can't just do anything inside the public, you can't just say, well, okay, well, you can wear whichever clothes you want inside the public.
but what would be the harm? Because I think you have to justify that statement then.
No, the state would have to justify that. Yeah, no, they
Yeah,
100% do. Let's say
exactly.
alien.
But if they
Well,
just
sure,
pass it,
but
then they don't have a justification. Therefore, it's a terrible law.
okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine. But that would make it not a fundamental right still. Of what you're saying, you're trying to say like it's a fundamental right of people to be able to choose individuals and freedom of expression or whatever nonsense that was. Sorry, but
Yeah,
that
yeah, it can be a fundamental right of people to do something, and it can also be a and it can also be fine to say, okay, maybe people should not have that fundamental right in specific situations. I think that's completely fine. Yes.
that doesn't that's not a law though. That's not a
No,
legal.
no, no.
That is,
That's an ethical system. That's a thing I have. Okay, like if you say yes, I think people should have the freedom of speech. Yes, I think people should have the freedom of movement. Yes, I think people should have this and this and this. Then I can also imagine a ton of situations where those rights should not be in place. Like for example, the White House is basically public property, right? I think people should be able to wear on public property. Do I think people should be able to walk into the White House? No, there are restricted areas, and I think it's fine that they're restricted.
okay, but you're basically saying it's a fundamental right, but it's not when it's not. No, there's nothing really to parse or deal
Yes,
with
I think
that.
fundamental rights can be limited in specific situations. Yes, yes.
Uh, well, then I wouldn't say it's a fundamental right.
Yeah, okay, so you don't care about freedom of speech. Could have just
Well,
said
we
that as
have
well.
freedom. Well, we have freedom of speech, but we have freedom of speech. Uh, how would you say that? Um, we have freedom of speech, but not in the sense that you could just wear whichever clothes or whatever. It's we're not our rights aren't based off freedom of speech. Our rights are based off individualism, from which freedom of speech comes from. And so the concept of freedom of speech in itself isn't it's it doesn't do enough justice to exactly what is happening. I would say, to be a bit more accurate, I would say we have right to individual speech, which is derived from individualism. We don't have freedom of speech, whatever that is. In that sense, we have right to individual speech. We
Do you
don't have
think people should be able to scream fire?
in a crowded
No, just on the street.
movie theater. Oh well, it depends. It really depends. It's if it's how the legal system does it now. It's if it's a lie and it causes people danger, and
Okay, so you
I'm
have the
sure
same
there's
system as I have. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Come on, you're saying yeah, people have the right to scream fire unless it does harm, unless they're lying, and I agree. Then why are you on
no,
board with the freedom of the t-shirts? You're incoherent. You're not making any sense.
no. I very specifically said we have right to individual speech. We don't have right to freedom of speech in the full way that you're talking
The
about.
outcome is
There's
still the
specific
same.
It's not because there's different kinds of speeches. You're trying to say like there's all speeches allowed, and it's just like, well, that's not allowed under the Constitution. What is allowed under the Constitution is a specific kind of speech, which is individual speech, the right to individual speech, which is mediated by a federal government, at least in America. And in Lockean terms, there's some analogs for all the other countries, including Netherlands.
I don't think I can continue this conversation.
Sure, sure. All right. Well, I can summarize real quick, I guess, what my position was, and
Yeah,
then bring it back.
make a closing
Uh,
statement. Yeah.
sure, and then you can, yeah, okay. All right, so yeah, there's no right of association. We only have right to associate as individuals. Every government, that I'm aware of, which may not be like China or something like that, but I don't see how you get it right from China either. Don't have the rights for marriage. Marriages in itself, it can't be justified. Definitely from individualism. And due to that, you can't have gay marriage be legalized, but it can't be made illegal, and it can't be made legal or illegal. So therefore, in that sense, we don't have gay marriage cannot be legalized.
Yeah, and I think marriage as a concept, I like to see it abolished as well. However, since we have marriage, we should extend those rights to gay people as well. I'm against discrimination in general. Um, I'm in favor of free speech. You know, I'm a libertarian like that. You know, I like free speech. I don't like people being discriminated or forced to do things that is limiting those freedoms. Uh, that is actively discriminatory. Um, and I hope I made it clear in this debate. I want to thank you, Shaw, to to debate
Sure.
me.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah. Hopefully we can debate about it again. Maybe we'll have like clear terms or something like that. But okay, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah,
That's
we'll
the
see. Later. Fuck. That was a shit show. Oh my god. Holy shit. Alright, if you enjoyed this debate, like, subscribe. You can message me if you want to debate as well. See you later.